Israel is going through a second wave of corona outburst. How does it influence the youth? We're about to find out. And what brings Shanna Fuld all the way from Queens, New York to the Holy Land? I'll ask her that myself later on. And of course, I'll update you on the latest news from Israel with my comments included, as usual. Let's begin. Well, Matan Ulitsky is a member of the Young Diplomats IL. He's from the city of Ashdod, and he'll tell us all about the impact of the current crisis on the Israeli youth. Matan, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
That's the city of Ashdod behind you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's the map of the city of Ashdod.
Looks great. Well, first of all, let's start with the corona, and let's start with the economy. How do you see it? How does it impact the city of Ashdod, as much as you can tell?
Well, Ashdod is unlike many other places in Israel. Although it's a large and evolving city, I'd say that the economy of Ashdod is not on par with other cities in Israel. So we are a bit below the average, and that means that for the average citizen of Ashdod, it is very hard. He is going to, many people in our city are going to lose their jobs, or they're going to stop going to school because they have to care for their families. So sure, the economic crisis that has been going on in this country all around is going to hit Ashdod even harder than in other places.
Mm-hmm. And Ashdod is a relatively large city, and it has a port and a large industrial area. But I understand that the port is still active, and at least part of the industrial area of the industries are working. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. The port is one of the largest in Israel, and it's mainly industrial. And one of the good things is that the port is still working, and I'm hoping that it will still somehow keep the economy going. But again, it is a large city with many citizens working in different places. So people who work in the port are going to have more security in their jobs, but others, I'm afraid, are not. So that is a big risk.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk a little bit about education, just to give us proportions. What grade are you in?
I'm right now going for the 12th and last grade.
Mm-hmm. So, because it's summer vacation, right? So you finished your junior year and you're going to your senior year in high school, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and I'll explain our audience in Israel that there is some kind of an equivalent to the SATs, which are exams that are taken mainly in the 11th and 12th grade. Were they conducted as usual this year?
Well, not at all. Many of the exams that have been taken are with everyone has masks, and there are much less people in classes. Mm-hmm. I know that in one of our exams that have been there, called the Bagrut examination, so in one of these examinations, there has been an entire class which has been sent to quarantine because there was a coronavirus positive in this class. Mm-hmm. So definitely it is a great challenge, and I still have one exam left. So
really? In what subject?
In Hebrew, actually.
In what? Sorry.
In Hebrew,
in Hebrew, subject. Okay, yeah. And Hebrew, you mean literature or grammar?
Mainly grammar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's an easy one. shouldn't be a problem.
I really hope you're right.
Okay, And okay, and what's going to happen next year? I think that's a major concern, especially for you. It's the last year in high school, right?
Yeah. So right now we know that on the 1st of September, when the education system is going to go back to normal in regular times. Right now, it will not be the case, and for our class, I think from fifth to the 12th grade, everyone is going to study through the internet, and there are not going to be any front frontal and face to face
Hmm.
lessons, at least for the close future.
Right. Let me ask you something, Matan. Do you have a younger brothers or sisters, siblings?
Yeah.
Okay. Any of them in the elementary school? Perhaps first, second grade, something like that?
They're not that young. They're
Oh.
in the sixth grade. So yeah, all of us are going to stay home, and it is going to be a challenge to
It's going
try
to be
to.
noisy at home, I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
But no, but I have a concern regarding the first graders. I think it's a challenge. It's a worldwide challenge, not just in Ashdod or in Israel or in the U.S. Because these young children who are going for the first time to school are not going to have almost any frontal learning. So how do you teach how to read and write through Zoom or through other means of communication? What do you think about that?
Well, to be honest, I totally don't know how. It is going to be a hard challenge, and teachers are going to have to be much more creative, and it is going to be hard.
Mhm.
Like, I imagine that Ashdod is, somehow it's a big city, so the town hall can help and assist in some ways. But let's
Mhm.
say that villages in the far south of Israel, I don't have any idea how they're going to get this mandatory education, and it is definitely going to be a large hit.
Mhm. Yeah, and then it starts to become a gap between more central and strong places like Ashdod or Tel Aviv or others, in rural areas where there have much larger challenges in their everyday life and definitely in the education. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's talk about the young diplomats, IL. I've interviewed a few of your colleagues and friends in the last few months, but give us an update. What's going on there in your
Well,
activities?
finally, excuse me.
In your activities, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm happy to report that we're finally back on track, and we are trying to, at least in these hard circumstances, still be active and do stuff.
Hmm.
Um, of course, it's much more challenging when you cannot meet face to face, but
Hmm.
we have had a few lectures that are on Zoom in the past, and we are trying to solve these problems. I do think that for some people, for the majority of the teens, it is actually quite a relief because many of us are spending much more of their time right now in social media. So it's like
Hmm.
their home territory, so they know how to behave in these places.
Hmm. Okay. First of all, I'm glad that you're back, and I think that the social media is the greatest challenge I mean, in our goal to explain the way Israel conducts its all its policies. And let's go on. I have another question for you. What is Acharai?
Well, Acharai is another group I'm a part of.
Mm-hmm.
It is a group that specializes in fitness and training for the army, because everyone has to serve in the army in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
It is mandatory. Everyone who comes to the age of 18 has to go and serve in the army in some sort of way. Acharai basically encourages teens to do their best and mainly go to fighting units and special forces. So in every time we meet, and again, it is challenging at these times. Um, we do burpees, we do push-ups, and all of these things in order to make ourselves stronger and more fit, so that it will be easier to
At
do
what
our
age does it start?
For our group of Saknai, I know that there are many groups all around Israel. So in our group, it's from the 10th grade,
Okay.
somewhere around the age of 15, 16.
And have you been
And
active since 10th grade?
no, actually, I started only this year.
This year. Okay. Yeah, it's enough. It's okay. Okay, and where do you aim to? Is there a specific unit that you want to serve in?
Yes, I want to serve in the Chavatzalat program. It's a program in the intelligence unit and serve in the research brigade. The reason I'm going to Acharai is really to learn to learn what it's like to be a soldier, because sometimes it is really tough and you have challenges that you have to go over. So although the place I want to go to is not connected in any kind of way to fighting, but I think that knowing these challenges and experiencing them can make me a better soldier when my time will come to serve.
Okay, how do you get to these units? Are there any exams, or just need to say that you want to go there?
Well, there are many exams. It is one of the longest and hardest programs to go to. The period that it takes and the steps you have to make in order to get to it are very high. And overall, from the entirety of Israel, only 50 people get to this program. It's in this program, you study how to be an officer, an intelligence officer, and how to analyze intelligence you get to make useful information out of it, so that the fighting troops will have the right information to have when they are deployed. So one of the things that you have to do is like do a psychometrical test, which is another test that's like the SAT. You have to do it and get a certain grade, which is pretty high.
So you have to do that next year. I mean, on your 12th
Yeah,
grade, right?
I have to do it before April of 12th grade, which means that in the next time this exam will take place in August, I will do it.
Oh, so you don't have a lot of time. You need to practice for that exam.
Yeah, that's
It's more
right.
complicated than the Bagrut, by the way. Wait, what's the grade, or what's the limit, the threshold that you need to pass in order to be able to get to this unit?
It's 650.
Okay, out of 800, you need to explain.
Out of 800, and the average grade is, if I'm not mistaken, 500 or so. So it's quite a high bar, and this is one of the first steps that you have to make. You also have to take a quiz about translating a language, and you also need to take a test by a psychologist who has to examine your abilities to be an officer, because the people who are in the Chavetzolah program are going to be officers who are in very high ranks, and hopefully are going to be the head of the intelligence units in the IDF. So yeah, you have to take many steps. It's a very long process. It's 9 years overall that you have to serve in the army, and yeah.
Well, sounds like a real challenge. First of all, I wish you best of luck in the upcoming exams. and in
Thank you
your
very much.
12th grade. I'm sure we'll talk before you recruit to the army, so we'll have time to discuss that as well. Matan Olitsky, member of the Young Diplomats IL from Ashdod, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we go on, we're taking a real quick break, so don't go anywhere.
When you want to know what's happening in the Holy Land, Newsreel gives you the latest news feed from Israel. Follow our live coverage of the topics that interest you.
All right, and now I'd like to introduce Shanna Fald. Shanna is a reporter, writer, producer, and lately also a podcaster. Hi, Shanna. How are you?
How are you?
Well, I'm doing. I always get asked this question, and I'm doing well.
As you can be, right?
Sorry?
As good as you can be in these.
Yeah. Actually, the situation outside is pretty tricky, and we'll talk about it in a bit. But first of all, what brings a Queens-born Manhattan news reporter to the Middle East?
Adventure. Adventure brings me here. I have always had an adventurous spirit, and I wanted to get out, see the world a little bit. When I was in university, I did quite a bit of traveling on the west side of the world. And I just knew since I was 12 years old that I really wanted an opportunity to live in Israel. I wanted to live with my people. I wanted to be a Jew and say it loud and proud. And so after working at my dream television station, the TV station that I woke up every morning and watched as a 13-year-old and wanted to work at, and even when I was scooping ice cream to get extra beer cash when I was in high school, which I shouldn't have been drinking beers in high school, but hey, sometimes we do things we're not proud of. And I would point at the screen and I'd say, hey, I'm going to work at that TV station. And I did. And then after 2 years, I was a little nervous that had I stayed the route in Manhattan, I would just get into a place where things were good and I wasn't going to want to leave. So I decided to jump, and I bought a ticket to Israel, and I've been here for almost 2 years.
Wow. So I think it would be fair to say that you feel comfortable when you're not comfortable.
I think that's true. I like to take on new projects. I like to go places I've never been. And I do think that I'm always moving on something. So yeah, I think that's a good, fair assessment.
And you mentioned it. You've been a reporter in quite a few media corporations, both in the US and in Israel. What are the differences between here and there?
So there's actually quite a few differences, but at the end of the day, being a journalist is similar. And the one thing that I love about being a journalist is that I always knew that this would be a job that I could do from anywhere. So even though you have to learn, you have to make your new contacts, your new sources, you have to maybe adjust to a language, you have to start to know the names of the streets, the areas which you're covering, so that if somebody says to you, I need you to do a report up on 59th Street, you know how to get on the subway and get there, or what highway or what roadway you should take. And in Israel, you should be able to do the same thing. But here are some differences. Should I start with the good ones or the bad ones?
Actually, before you go to this, and do you feel that a reporter or a journalist has to be someone that in his or her character is extremely curious? Do you think that curiosity is something that is essential for this job?
I think that curiosity is an important part of the job, but I don't know that it's number one. For me, I'll speak from my experience. For me, it's passion. So I think more than curiosity, it's the passion. It's the passion for me to find a story or to bring out something from a person that nobody's heard before, or to give somebody an opportunity to express something. So I think there's different types of journalists. I think for somebody who is really an investigator, which sometimes I am. You have to have a very curious mind. But I also think there's a lot of points in journalism in which you can just do your best to highlight something, and through getting to show somebody else's passion, you might pick up something that nobody was expecting to hear.
Mhm. All right, well, let's go to the good and bad. Start with the good ones.
Okay, I'll start with the good ones. Israeli press events always have great food. Okay. I have never been treated so nicely at events. When I feel in Israel very respected. When I cover an event, everyone's very happy to see me. Oh, Shanna, you're from the Jerusalem Post. You're from this outlet. Great to see you. Can I get you a glass of water? It's much tougher than that in New York. Reporters get a really difficult go at it in New York, and there have been so many times that I've been physically elbowed out of the way, or I've been the only little woman in a room with a camera on my shoulder amongst a bunch of big husky guys who have come up with a truck, and I show up in my personal car or a little Camry from the station. So I think that I feel it's a little bit nicer. And one thing that is so amazing about Israel is that everything that can be a party is a party. So I have covered protests.
People are happy here, optimistic.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah.
So I've covered protests in Israel that I didn't know if I was at a party or if I was at a protest. There was a DJ. There were people dancing. There are people snacking. There are people high-fiving each other, having a great time. So that, for me, has been very refreshing as a reporter. Are you ready for the bad stuff?
Yeah, on the other side.
For the bad stuff, I would say government offices do not get back to you in the same way that they do in New York. So in New York, every office has somebody it's their job just to answer emails and get back to reporters. Of course, this comes with some language barriers as well. So if I'm reaching out to a ministry in Israel in English, the person on the receiving end might put that email at the bottom of the pile because it's going to take them.
Sometimes it's just a deadlock. If it's not in Hebrew, it's a deadlock. They don't know what to do with it.
Or maybe they can give it attention, but they choose to put it aside and get to it later, and then maybe they'll get to it tomorrow, and then maybe they never get to it. So that is something that I think is difficult, but I would say that most people, when I'm trying to find a story and I reach out to somebody, really not from the government, really go through lengths to set me up with a source or get me a phone number or at least give me their best for whatever story that I'm working on. So I think people have really extended themselves to me here.
Because as we said, people are optimistic and nice. Yeah. Okay, now for the main question, what is going to be on your show in Newsrael next week?
So next week, I'm going to do a show on Newsrael. And I said, let's start talking business. Okay, I love talking business in Tel Aviv more than I liked business news in the States, because here there is something new every day. There are a lot of people really hustling, which I really respect. And then aside from the hustle is my number one, it's passion. So I expect to bring a lot of passion next week. I won't say who my guest or guests are going to be, but I intend on showing off their passion, what they're creating, what they're selling, what they're working on, what they're researching. It's always very interesting, and there's always more to the story than what meets the eye. So I think through business and tech, people who are watching the show are really going to experience the passion, what drives that person to get up in the morning and work on their invention, work on this business, how they're going to save the world, change the world, come up with a new vaccine, put their business on the stock exchange. So I think that my show next week, it's going to be Thursday at this time. I hope that the viewers are going to meet somebody that they've never met before and learn something that they've never learned before. And more than that, just sort of feel a little bit like they're a part of the culture here. Because, Zohar, I'm sure that you have a lot of friends who are working on something new. And so dinner talk or beach talk is like, hey, how's that project going? Right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you can
I'm one of those, by the way. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
So I hope that for people who don't live in Israel, they can come to the show and they can get a little taste like they're here, get a little taste like they're having a talk with their neighbor about their new invention.
And I must add that Israeli innovation is amazing and almost unmatched. And then that is definitely something that you want to see and hear and learn about. Definitely.
I'll tell you that a couple Fridays ago, I went on a tour of the Paris Center for Innovation and Peace. Have you heard of it or been there?
No.
It's in Yafo, and the whole building is dedicated to innovation. And the first floor has these machines. They're computer screens, life-size computer screens, and each one has an image of an Israeli innovator through modern and also from 15 years ago. And it was so amazing to see all the people who came to Israel from somewhere else, made something, sold something, became a millionaire, and then all the people, there were people who were 17 who created things that they never thought they could create. And when you touch the buttons, you can touch one that says, what was your biggest challenge? How did you come up with this concept? And you hear, it looks like they're speaking to you, and you can hear their voice describing their innovation that they made and how they changed the whole country with it. So it's very cool.
Yeah. I've heard about the place. I haven't had the time to visit there, but I heard that the exhibition is great, and anyone who visits Israel and Tel Aviv should go to Jaffa and visit definitely, and I'll do that myself as well.
It's on the beach. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's on the beach, exactly. Okay, Shana Fald, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck. I'll definitely tune in next week to find out who is going to be, and good luck.
You're too kind, Zohar. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Okay, and just a few quick updates before I send you to go on to your day. So, last night, Amira Oron began her role as Israel's ambassador to Egypt. Oron is the 14th ambassador to Egypt since the peace treaty was signed between the countries, and the first woman ever in this position. And you have to understand that these two specific roles, ambassador of Israel in Egypt and ambassador of Israel in Jordan, are very sensitive, because even though we have peace treaties with both of these countries, they have a lot of internal pressure with anti-Israeli, and the ambassador is definitely, he's a front soldier of the Israeli diplomacy there. So it is so important to find the best that we can find in our foreign affairs ministry to send over there. So now we have the first woman ambassador in Egypt. The IDF unveiled its new Border Defense Corps in the ceremony yesterday. The corps are part of the IDF reconstructing process meant to realize the concept of smart and lethal borders. Now, you have to keep in mind that in Israel, all the borders are patrolled and monitored through multiple platforms. It is a major part of our defense concept, and it proved very effective against terror attacks and illegal immigration. Of course, in a case of a full-scale war, it is less relevant, because then the large divisions, the troops, the Air Force are much more relevant. But in terms of controlling the borders and keeping them safe and clean, it is a very important task that proves itself very, very important to the state. Okay, Corona update. Well, as I mentioned, we're in a burst of infections. We have almost 2,000 new cases in the last 24 hours. The exact figure is 1,780, and it is actually a new record. What you see right now is the graph of the checks, of the tests. So how many tests are done every day? And as I told you before, we are standing where it fluctuates, and it's between 15 to 30,000 tests a day. The problem is that the number of patients or the number of infected people that you can find out in this amount of tests is limited. So it is more than likely to assume that the actual number of patients is much higher than the figure that I just stated. So as you can see, the numbers are going up all the time. And there is a grants program here in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Minister of Finance Israel Katz presented yesterday a grants program in order to support the Israeli citizens and families during this financial crisis caused by the coronavirus. Now, this method has been criticized both from within the government and by professional factors in the Ministry of Finance. Now, you have to understand the idea is very, very simple. Every citizen of Israel is going to receive an amount of money. If you live alone, you will receive 750 shekels. That's about $220 US. And if you are a family, it depends on the number of children, 1 or 2 or 3. A family with 3 will receive the maximum amount. If you have more children, you'll still receive the high amount. It's 3,000 shekel, which is almost $1,000 US. So the total cost of this, and the point is that it's very simple. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to apply. You don't have to ask. You don't have to stand in line. You don't have to send an email. Everyone will receive it automatically. It's that simple. And the simplicity is what makes it possible. And I'll talk about it in a minute. So the cost of this measure is about 1.72 billion US dollars. That's a huge amount for a state like Israel to spend on the grants program. And it has never happened before, but again, we've never been in such a situation before. So there is a criticism throughout the government about it. I can tell you that I think the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance are doing the right thing, and I'll explain. First one is, as I mentioned, there is no bureaucracy. If you wanted to give a grants program which is differential, okay, so only the ones that are have the lowest income, let's say, will receive the grant, it means a lot of bureaucracy. It means you need to start building some kind of a mechanism with criterions and committees and appeals and courts, and all of that would take months to get on track, and it will cost money because you need to hire people in order to do that. So when you do it this way, there's no bureaucracy. It's easy. Number two, it's much more dignifying for the receivers. When you receive, it doesn't matter if it's a voucher or stamps or whatever, when you're on the receiving side, you always need to pass this kind of humiliating path in order to receive something that the state thinks that you should receive, that you're entitled to receive. And you lose some dignity on the way. You lose some dignity because you need to go through some kind of humiliation when you do that. But when everybody receives this, it's much easier and it's much more dignifying. So that's number 2. Number 3, I think that a large portion of the wealthy people will spend the money. No one will receive the money and then put it in some kind of a fund. Okay, so anyone who doesn't need the money immediately will do one of 2 things. Will either buy goods, which is good for the economy because it keeps our businesses open. Okay, you do more businesses, you consume more, which is good. Or the other option is to donate the money, and I've already seen tons of groups in WhatsApp, in Facebook, wherever, asking people if you feel that you don't need all the money, or you can spare a bit of it, then please donate it to 1, 2, 3, or many charities that really need the money, that it will get to the people that are actually in much bigger need for it. So eventually, even though the money is spread to everyone, eventually it will get distributed in a very efficient way, where the people that needs it will receive more than the people who don't need it. And I think it's a very good measure to take, and I think the Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing the right thing. All right, that's all for today. If you like the show, share it with your friends, invite them to follow our page and website. I'll see you again here on Monday for another daily talk, and until then, have a great weekend and God bless you all.
When you want to know what's happening in the Holy Land, Newsreel gives you the latest news feed from Israel. Follow our live coverage of the topics that interest you.